Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku activated the buried core. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air didn't smell like air anymore. It smelled like copper, ozone, and pulverized concrete. It was the scent of a city that had been not just destroyed, but erased. Izuku Midoriya hung suspended in the air, Black Whip straining like the muscles of a titan to keep him aloft. But his real muscles were screaming. It was a high-pitched, keening wail in his nervous system that drowned out the roar of the wind. His arms were purple, spiderwebbed with the red jagged lines of stress fractures that Recovery Girl had warned him about a lifetime ago. Move, he commanded his legs. Move. If you stop, everyone dies. Below him, the ruin of Jaku's city stretched out like a graveyard of teeth. And floating above it, a silhouette of pure nightmare, Tamura Shigaraki. Or at least, the thing that wore Shigaraki's face. The white hair danced in the updraft of heat rising from the crater. The red eyes were no longer just manic, they were possessed. Ancient. Calculated. The holes in his hands, the rivets in his skin. He looked less like a human and more like a weapon that had shed its casing. You're persistent, Shigaraki said. His voice was layered, a chaotic harmony of his own rasp and a deeper, smoother baritone that made the hairs on Izuku's neck stand up. All for one. But look around you, Izuku Midoriya. The game is over. The board is flipped. Izuku gritted his teeth, swinging his body around using the centrifugal force of Black Whip. It's not over until you stop moving, stubborn. Shigaraki raised a hand. He didn't even look at Izuku. He looked past him, toward the crumpled form of Eraserhead, Aizawa-sensei, who was being dragged away by a bleeding Ryukyu. The eyes, Shigaraki muttered. They are inconvenient. Don't you touch him. The roar came from Katsuki Bakugo. The explosion boy was a blur of orange and black, propelling himself through the air with a ferocity that bordered on suicidal. AP shot, autocannon, beams of concentrated heat hammered into Shigaraki, but the villain merely waved his hand through the smoke. A shockwave of air pressure, stolen from some unknown hero, batted Bakugo aside like a fly. Bakugo smashed through a standing pillar of concrete, coughing blood, but he scrambled back up instantly. He's too fast, Endeavor wheezed from the ground. The number one hero was on one knee, flames sputtering on his shoulders. He was overheating. His cooling system had failed minutes ago. We can't get close. Izuku felt the panic rising in his throat, tasting like bile. Think, damn it. Danger sense is going haywire. It's not giving me directions anymore, it's just screaming one continuous note. The battle had been raging for what felt like hours, but it had only been minutes since Shigaraki woke up. In that time, he had decayed the hospital, leveled the city, and shrugged off the combined might of the top heroes. The only thing keeping them alive was Aizawa's eyes. Erasure was the dam holding back the flood. But dams crack. A streak of silver flashed in the periphery. A Nomu, a high-end survivor, lunged from the dust. It wasn't aiming for the students. It was aiming for Aizawa. Sensei! Izuku screamed, activating 45% full cowling. The pain was blinding, his bones grinding together, but he shot forward. He was too slow. The Nomu didn't hit Aizawa. It hit the ground in front of him, kicking up a cloud of dust. But in that split second of obstruction, Aizawa blinked. One blink. That was all the devil needed. Shigaraki smiled. It was a horrific tearing of skin. There, the pressure returned instantly. It wasn't just wind, it was power. Decay, super regeneration, air cannon, radio waves. All the quirks Aizawa had been suppressing came rushing back into Shigaraki's body at once. The air around the villain distorted, heat waves rippling so violently that light bent around him. Shigaraki vanished. Danger sense, death. 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 Izuku didn't see him move. He felt the impact before his brain registered the image. Shigaraki was suddenly in front of him, hand outstretched. 5 fingers. One for all, the dual voice whispered. Come home, little brother. DKU. Bakugo screamed. Izuku tried to twist. He tried to summon float, Black Whip, anything. But Shigaraki's hand closed around his throat. Cold. It wasn't the stinging pain of decay. It was a cold so profound it felt like the vacuum of space. Izuku gasped, but no air entered his lungs. His vision tunneled. The sounds of the battle, endeavors shouting, the crumbling buildings, the wind, were sucked away into a vacuum. The world turned gray. Then black. The vestige world, the throne room of One for All. Izuku slammed into the ground. It wasn't the misty, dreamlike floor he was used to. The ground was obsidian, hard and cold, cracking under the impact. He scrambled to his feet, clutching his throat. He was in the vestige world, but it was wrong. Usually, this place was quiet. Ethereal. A place of auroras and echoes. Now, the sky was bleeding. Great tears of crimson sludge were dripping from the void above, eating away at the golden lights of One for All. The throne room, the semicircle of chairs where the previous users sat, was under siege. Hold the line! The shout came from Nana Shimura. She stood tall, her cape billowing in a wind that didn't exist, her hands raised against a massive tide of darkness that was pouring into the mental space. Beside her, Daigoro Banjo, the fifth user, was using a metaphysical manifestation of Black Whip to reinforce the walls of their reality. It's too heavy! Banjo roared, his spectral teeth gritted. He's not just knocking on the door, ninth. He's tearing the damn house down. Izuku ran toward them. Grandma! Banjo-san, ninth. The first user Yoichi turned. He looked terrified. His usually calm, sickly features were twisted in panic. You shouldn't be here. You need to wake up. If you stay here, he takes everything. I can't move my body. Izuku yelled, reaching the circle of chairs. He's got me. A massive boom shook the mental realm. The darkness surged forward, taking the shape of a giant hand. It smashed into the shimmering gold barrier the vestiges were holding up, cracked spiderweb through the light. From the sludge, a figure emerged. It was All for One, not the man in the suit, but the essence of the quirk itself. A towering shadow with a face of white static. Found you, the voice boomed. It resonated not in ears, but in the soul. My little brother's legacy. You've kept it polished. How kind. You're not having it. Nana screamed. She floated forward, throwing a punch of pure will. It connected with the shadow, blowing a hole in its chest, but the sludge just reformed instantly. Pathetic echoes, AFO sneered. You are merely memories etched into power. I am the power itself. You cannot stop the river from flowing into the sea. The shadow lashed out. Tendrils of black slime shot past Nana and wrapped around the fourth user, Haikyuu Shinomori. Fourth! Izuku screamed. Shinomori gasped as the sludge began to absorb him. Don't let him touch the core, he wheezed, before being dragged violently into the wall of darkness. His chair and the circle crumbled to dust. He's eating them, Izuku realized with dawning horror. He's not just stealing the quirk. He's consuming the souls. We are the resistance mechanism, Yoichi said, gripping Izuku's shoulder. His grip was surprisingly strong. As long as we fight, he cannot fully integrate the quirk. But our will is finite, Izuku, and his greed is infinite. Another impact shook the world. The ground beneath Izuku's feet splintered. Through the cracks, blinding white light seeped up. What is that? Izuku asked, looking down. Yoichi's eyes widened. He tried to pull Izuku back. Don't look down there. Focus on the enemy, but there's something calling. Give it to me. The AFO's shadow grew larger, eclipsing the sky. It swatted Banjo aside like a toy. The darkness rushed toward Izuku, a tidal wave of malice. Come here, Izuku Midoriya. Let me free you from this burden. Izuku looked at the wave. He looked at Nana, who was fading, her spirit flickering like a dying candle. He looked at All Might's hazy, unformed vestige, which was standing silently, unable to act. He realized then, we can't win this, not like this. Not with willpower alone. All for One had centuries of will, centuries of greed. He was a black hole. You couldn't outwrestle a black hole, you had to outshine it, Yoichi Izuku said, his voice trembling. What is at the bottom? Yoichi froze. The wave of darkness was seconds away. Izuku, no. Tell me. The singularity, Yoichi whispered, the fear in his voice outweighing the terror of AFO. The stockpile. 8 generations of raw power, fused into a single point. It's not meant to be touched. It's the engine, Izuku. We are just the drivers. If you touch the engine, it will kill me, it will unmake you. The darkness crashed down. Izuku didn't jump back. He didn't brace himself. He dove. 9th. Yoichi screamed, lunging to grab him, but his fingers brushed through Izuku's spectral arm like smoke. Izuku fell through the cracks in the obsidian floor. He plummeted out of the throne room, away from the battle, away from the screaming vestiges. He fell into the light. The deep, the sensation of falling vanished. There was no up or down here. There was only pressure. It felt like being at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, but instead of water, he was drowning in energy. It was thick, viscous, and searingly hot. This was the stockpile. Every day All Might had run in the rain. Every squat Nana Shimura had done. Every desperate punch thrown by Lariat. Every second of cultivation, stockpiled and compressed for decades, layer upon layer, compacted into a space smaller than an atom. Izuku swam through the memories. He saw flashes of faces he didn't know. He saw a city burning in the 1940s. He saw All Might smiling at a debut. He saw himself, crying on the floor as a 4-year-old, watching a computer screen. It's not here, he thought, his mind beginning to fracture under the weight. I need the center. The source. The pressure increased. His mental avatar began to burn. His skin was peeling away, revealing glowing light underneath. It hurt. It hurt more than breaking his arms. It hurt more than Sir Nightai's death. It was the pain of existence being compressed. Why am I doing this? The question floated in the white void. To save everyone. Why save everyone? Because they looked like they needed saving. Even him? Even the monster above? Especially him. To save Tenko Shimura, I have to be stronger than all for one. I have to be stronger than one for all. He saw it. In the center of the crushing white ocean, there was a sphere. It wasn't large. It was perhaps the size of a baseball. But it was terrifying. It didn't glow. It absorbed the light around it, and spat it back out as something else. It hummed with a sound that vibrated Izuku's very concept of self. It was the core. The singularity point. The place where the quark had grown so dense it had gained its own gravity. It was a star trapped in a cage of human genetics. A seal wrapped around it, chains made of golden light. The safety limiters. The brakes that kept the user from exploding instantly upon activation. The locks that allowed Deku to use 45% instead of 1,000,000%. Izuku floated before it. He felt tiny. He felt like an ant standing before a nuclear reactor meltdown. Above him, far away in the upper strata of the mindscape, he felt AFO's cold grip closing around the vestiges. He felt Nana crying out. He felt the end. If I don't open this, we lose. Shigaraki gets the power. The world ends. If I open this, I die. Izuku looked at his hands. They were already glowing, transparent. I wanted to be a hero, he whispered to the silence. I wanted to be like you, All Might. He reached out. The heat was unbearable. It felt like sticking his hand into the sun. But he didn't pull back. He grabbed the golden chains wrapping the core. Save them, Izuku commanded. Not a request. A command to the power itself. He pulled. The chains didn't just break. They shattered. There was a sound like a bell ringing across the universe. The core didn't explode. It expanded. It pulsed once, a heartbeat of pure, unadulterated omnipotence. And then it lunged at him. It didn't enter him. It became him. Izuku Midoriya ceased to be a boy. For a moment, he became the star. Real world, Jaka City. Shigaraki's hand was clamped tight around Deku's throat. The villain was grinning. His eyes rolled back in ecstasy as he felt the resistance in the quirk factor crumble. It's mine, Shigaraki hissed. It's finally. The air went silent. Not quiet. Silent. All sound waves were instantly negated. The wind stopped. The dust froze in midair. Shigaraki's eyes snapped open. The grin vanished. He looked at the boy in his grip. Izuku's eyes were open. But the green irises were gone. The pupils were gone. His eyes were two orbs of blinding, solid white light. What? Shigaraki started. He didn't get to finish the word. Crack. It wasn't the sound of a bone breaking. It was the sound of reality snapping. A pillar of energy didn't shoot into the sky. It erupted from Izuku's chest, 360 degrees, a sphere of annihilation. It wasn't the jagged, chaotic lightning of One for All. This was different. It was plasma. It was heavy. It moved like liquid fire. Shigaraki's hand, the hand of the ultimate organism, enhanced with all for one and hyperregeneration, vaporized. There was no blood. The heat was so intense the tissues sublimated instantly into gas. Arg! Shigaraki screamed, flinging himself backward, thrusters erupting from his spine to gain distance. But the gravity had changed. The ground beneath Izuku didn't crack, it melted. The concrete turned to glass in a perfect circle, rippling outward like water. The debris that had been floating in the air was atomized. Izuku didn't fall. He didn't float with Black Whip. He simply stood on the air, the laws of physics bending around him to accommodate his presence. His skin was changing. Veins of white light were crawling up his neck, across his face, fracturing his skin like porcelain. The scars on his arms were glowing so bright they were painful to look at. Deku! Bakugo screamed from the ground, shielding his eyes with his arm. The heat wash was hitting them now, a dry, scorching wind that felt like opening an oven door. What the hell did you do? Izuku slowly tilted his head. He looked at his own hand. The glove had burned away. His skin was white-hot, shedding sparks that lingered in the air like fireflies. He looked down at Shigaraki, who was clutching his stump of a wrist, looking at Izuku with genuine confusion and, for the first time, fear. You! Shigaraki rasped, his regeneration struggling to close the cauterized wound. What is that? That's not All Might's power. That's not a quirk. Izuku opened his mouth. When he spoke, it wasn't just his voice. It was the sound of 1,000 voices speaking in unison, layered over the roar of a furnace. Leave. He flicked a finger. Just one finger. No wind up. No Delaware smash. Just a flick. The air pressure collapsed. A tunnel of vacuum ripped through the ruins of Jaka City. It hit Shigaraki like the fist of God. The villain was launched. He didn't fly. He vanished from sight, turning into a streak of blur on the horizon. The shockwave that followed flattened every standing structure for 3 miles in a straight line. The clouds above parted, revealing the stratosphere. Silence returned. Izuku hovered there, the white lightning arcing lazily off his body, melting the asphalt 10 feet below him. Endeavor stared, his flames feeling like matches compared to the sun hovering above them. Midoriya? Izuku turned his head slowly toward the heroes. The white eyes were blank. There was no recognition. No fear. No humanity. There was only the core, burning through the vessel, finally awake after 100 years of sleep. And it was hungry. Izuku's body gave a violent jerk. A crack appeared on his cheek, leaking white light. He let out a scream, not of combat, but of agony, that shattered the remaining windows in the district. The energy spiked again. The glass beneath him began to boil. He's going to blow, Bakugo whispered, the horror dawning on him. He recognized the look of nitroglycerin reaching its flash point. He's going to take the whole prefecture with him. Bakugo launched himself into the air. Deku! Stop it! Turn it off! He reached for his childhood friend. He grabbed Izuku's shoulder. The gauntlet on Bakugo's hand melted instantly. The heat traveled up his arm, searing his skin. Bakugo gritted his teeth against the scream, refusing to let go. Izuku! The white eyes blinked. For a fraction of a second, the green returned, swimming in the sea of power. A tear evaporated before it could roll down his cheek. Kaken? The voice was small. Broken. It burns. Then the white swallowed the green again. The core roared, and the world went white. Jaka City ruins, Hypocenter, the glass field. The silence that followed the expulsion of Tamura Shigaraki was heavy. It wasn't the quiet of a library or a sleeping house. It was the stunned, ringing silence of a battlefield that had just witnessed a miracle curdle into a nightmare. Katsuki Bakugo knelt on the ground, his breath hitching in his throat. His right gauntlet was gone, slagged into an unrecognizable lump of polymer and metal that smoked on the ground beside him. The skin of his hand was red, blistering rapidly. He had held on for a second too long, but the pain in his hand was a distant signal, drowned out by the screaming alarm bells in his mind. He looked up. Izuku Midoriya stood 10 meters away. Or rather, the thing that used to be Izuku Midoriya. The dust had settled because the heat had burned it out of the air. The ground beneath Izuku was no longer concrete. It was a perfectly smooth, concave mirror of black obsidian. The sheer thermal intensity of his activation had liquefied the street and cooled it into glass in the span of a heartbeat. Izuku was breathing, but it sounded wrong. It was a mechanical, rasping sound, like a bellows fanning a forge. His hero costume, the beta suit his mother had made, upgraded by Hatsum, was disintegrating. The green fabric was bleaching white, the fibers giving up under the radiation leaking from his pores, and the skin. Bakugo's eyes widened. Izuku's skin was cracking. Fissures ran up his neck, across his cheeks, and down his arms. But instead of blood, blinding white light pulsed from the cracks. He looked like a porcelain doll that had been smashed and glued back together with pure starlight. A living example of kintsugi, the art of golden repair. But this wasn't repair. This was containment failure. Deku? Bakugo choked out. He tried to stand, but the air pressure around them was immense. It felt like standing at the bottom of the ocean. Endeavor, the #1 hero, struggled to his feet nearby. Flames sputtered weakly on his shoulders. For a man whose quirk was hellflame, he looked terrified of the heat. Bakugo, Endeavor rasped, shielding his face from the glare radiating off the boy. Stay back. That's not regular heat. My sensors are maxed out. It's ionizing radiation. I don't care. Bakugo snarled, forcing his trembling legs to straighten. Nerd! Snap out of it. You blew him away. It's over. Power down. Izuku's head twitched. It was a jerky, unnatural motion, like a puppet being pulled by a string it wasn't used to. He didn't turn to look at Bakugo. He was looking at the horizon, where a plume of dust marked Shigaraki's landing zone miles away. The white eyes, pupilless, irisless, just two burning holes in reality, narrowed. Target, active, the voice said. It wasn't Izuku's voice. It was a chorus. It was Nana Shimura's resolve, Daigoro Banjo's grit, Yoichi's sorrow, and 1,000 other whispers fused into a single, distorted frequency. It sounded like a radio tuned to a dying star. Target? Bakugo stepped forward. The villain is gone. You won. Stop. Izuku moved. He didn't wind up. He didn't bend his knees to jump. One moment he was standing on the glass, and the next, the glass shattered into a million shards as a vacuum imploded where he had been. There was a sonic boom that knocked Bakugo and Endeavor flat on their backs. By the time the sound hit them, Izuku was already 3 miles away. 3 miles west. The impact zone? Tamura Shigaraki hauled himself out of the side of a mountain. His body was a wreck. His left arm, the one the boy had looked at, was gone. Not cut off, but erased. The cauterized stump smoked, the super-regeneration quirks warring with the lingering energy that seemed to be eating his cells from the inside out. Damn it! Shigaraki hissed. The voice of All for One was loud in his head, no longer smug, but frantic. Move, Tamura. You must move. That power, it is not the one for all I know. Shut up, sensei, Shigaraki spat, coughing up black sludge. You said he was weak. You said he was a stubborn child with a heavy bat. That? He looked at the sky. That isn't a child. The sky above them turned purple. The clouds evaporated, punching a hole straight through to the dark blue of the upper atmosphere. A streak of white light descended. Shigaraki didn't have time to think. His survival instinct, the animal brain of the Noma modifications, took over. He slammed his remaining hand into the mountainside. Radio waves! Air cannon! Heavy payload! He unleashed a blast of pressurized air and electromagnetic disruption that would have leveled a skyscraper. It was the attack that had kept Endeavor at bay. The white streak didn't even slow down. Izuku Midoriya crashed into the mountain. The impact didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like a crack in the Earth's crust. The mountain didn't crumble. It was sheared in half. The top half of the peak disintegrated into dust, blown backward by the sheer force of Izuku's arrival. Shigaraki was thrown into the air, tumbling through a storm of debris. He righted himself with airwalk, floating amidst the falling boulders. Below him, standing in the center of a crater that was glowing red with molten rock, stood the avatar of the core. Izuku floated up. He wasn't using float. Float was a quirk that manipulated personal gravity. This was different. The air around him was simply pushing him up, repelled by the energy output. He was rising on a cushion of his own power. Mine, the distorted voice roared. Izuku raised a hand. He didn't make a fist. He just swiped his open palm through the air. The space in front of him warped. A blade of pressurized kinetic energy, visible only as a distortion in the light, sliced through the air. Shigaraki dodged, but not fast enough. The invisible blade caught his leg. It severed the limb cleanly, passing through bone and muscle as if they were smoke. The wave continued, slicing the top off a forest 2 miles behind him. Arg! Shigaraki screamed, regenerating the leg in a burst of grotesque flesh. You want to play monster? Fine. I'll show you a monster. Shigaraki reached out with his remaining hand. Thousands of rivets shot out of his back, black tendrils of instability seeking to impale the glowing boy. Rivets, stab, the black spikes rushed at Izuku. Izuku didn't dodge. He just flared. The light intensified. The buried core, the singularity point, surged. The heat around Izuku's body jumped to thousands of degrees. The rivets touched his aura and evaporated. They didn't melt, they turned to ash instantly. Shigaraki watched in horror as his attack was eaten by the boy's mere presence. Izuku flew forward. He was faster than Gran Torino. Faster than Hawks. He was a blur of light. He slammed into Shigaraki, grabbing the villain's face with a hand that burned like a branding iron. They crashed through the air, breaking the sound barrier once, twice, 3 times in a second. Get off! Shigaraki roared, unleashing a point-blank decay wave. The gray decay spread over Izuku's arm. For a microsecond, the skin began to flake. But then, the glowing veins pulsed. The core rejected the decay. The energy pushed the quirk out, burning away the affected cells and replacing them with pure energy. Izuku wasn't healing. He was replacing his biology with physics. He swung Shigaraki down. The villain struck the ground with the force of a meteor, carving a trench through the countryside that tore through a highway and demolished an abandoned evacuation center. The outskirts, Team Endeavor. Shoto Todoroki slid on an ice ramp, catching up to his father and Bakugo. He was panting, his left side covered in frost, his right side steaming. What is happening? Shoto yelled over the roar of the wind. The temperature, it's fluctuating wildly. 1 second it's freezing, the next it's boiling. It's Deku, Bakugo gritted out, propelling himself forward with explosions that seemed pathetic compared to the devastation ahead. He's messing up the weather systems. They reached the ridge overlooking the new battlefield. What they saw stopped them cold. It was a wasteland. The lush forest that surrounded Jaka's city was gone. In its place was a smoldering plain of ash. In the center, 2 figures were clashing. But it wasn't a fight. It was a mauling. Shigaraki was trying everything. Giant air blasts, radio waves, regeneration, strength enhancers. But Deku was walking through it. Literally walking. They saw Deku take a blast to the chest that would have killed All Might. Deku didn't even stumble. He just kept walking forward, the ground melting under his feet. He's not fighting, Shoto whispered, his eyes wide. He's hunting. He's not in control, Bakugo said, his voice trembling with a rare fury. Look at him, icy hot. Look at the way he moves. No wasted movement. No mumbling. No strategy. It's just raw output. Something else is driving the car. The vestige world? Endeavor asked, clutching his side. Worse, Bakugo said. That light, it's the stockpile. He unlocked the basement, and now the house is on fire. Suddenly, the ground began to rumble. A rhythmic, earth-shaking thumping approached from the south. Master. A deep, booming voice echoed. Gigantomachia. The walking mountain burst through the smoke, carrying the league of villains on his back. He was huge, terrifying, and blindly loyal. He saw Shigaraki on the ground, regenerating from a pulp. "Master is hurt," Makia roared. Tears streamed down his rock-like face. "Small insect hurt Master." Makia raised a fist the size of a bus. He aimed it at the small, glowing white figure standing over Shigaraki. "Midoriya, move!" Endeavor screamed, igniting his flames to intervene, but he was too far away. The fist crashed down. The singularity point. Izuku didn't look up. The core didn't care about size. Mass was irrelevant to energy. Threat detected. Large scale. Biological density, high. The thoughts weren't words. They were impulses. The core was a sun, and a sun does not fear a rock. As Gigantomachia's fist descended, blocking out the light, Izuku raised his right arm. The glowing fissures on his skin flared brighter, the white light turning slightly blue. He didn't punch. He snapped his fingers. Fa Gene, limitless. He released the kinetic energy he had built up simply by existing in this state. The shockwave was visible. A dome of transparent force erupted from Izuku's position. It hit Gigantomachia's fist. The giant didn't just stop. His arm shattered. The shockwave traveled up his limb, snapping the dense bones like dry twigs. "Gra!" Makia screamed, a sound that shook the fillings in the hero's teeth. The force didn't stop at the arm. It hit Makia's chest, lifting the multi-ton giant off his feet. The League of Villains, Dabi, Toga, Spinner, Compress, were flung from his back like ragdolls, saved only by Mr. Compress hastily marbleizing Toga and Spinner, while Dabi blasted fire to cushion his own fall. Makia flew backward. He tumbled end over end, crushing a swath of forest, before landing 2 kilometers away with a thud that registered on seismographs in Tokyo. He didn't get up. The walking disaster was unconscious. Silence fell again. Izuku stood amidst the dust, his arm still raised. He slowly lowered it. Smoke was rising from his skin. Not steam, smoke. His flesh was beginning to char. He one-shot Makia. Dabi whispered from where he had landed in a tree. His blue flames flickered out. For the first time in his life, Toya Todoroki looked at fire and felt cold. That's not a hero. The descent. Shigaraki lay in the dirt. He was missing an arm and a leg again. His regeneration was slowing down. He was running out of energy. He looked up at the figure floating toward him. The White Devil? Why? Shigaraki wheezed. Why do you go this far? You're dying. I can see it. You're burning your own lifespan. For what? For a society that rejects you? For people who don't know you. Izuku landed. His feet touched the ground, and the dirt hissed. The white eyes stared down. Inside the vestige world, the real Izuku Midoriya was screaming. He was banging on the walls of the core, trying to reach the controls. Stop! That's enough. You're going to kill him. We have to save him, not execute him. But the core was deaf. The core was the accumulated rage of one for all against all for one. It was the antibody designed to kill the virus. And now that it had a physical form, it would not stop until the virus was purged. Eradicate, the core spoke. Izuku raised both hands. Between them, a sphere of energy began to form. It was a miniature sun. The heat became unbearable. The ground for 100 meters around them simply evaporated. Shit, Shigaraki realized. He's not going to capture me. Run, Tamura! All for one screamed in his head. Abandon the body if you must. Just survive. Spinner! Shigaraki yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. From the wreckage of the forest, the lizard villain drove the surviving truck, a battered, half-crushed armored vehicle, straight through the flames. Boss! Spinner screamed, eyes wild with terror. Shigaraki forced his broken body to move. He threw himself toward the truck. Izuku watched them. The sphere in his hands grew larger. He was charging a blast that would wipe the entire prefecture off the map. No! A blast of explosion hit Izuku from the side. It did 0 damage. The explosion washed over the white aura and dissipated. But the kinetic force was just enough, just barely enough, to tilt Izuku's aim by a fraction of a degree. Bakugo landed in front of Izuku. His hero costume was shredded. His skin was burned from the proximity. Stop it, DKU! Bakugo screamed, slamming his hands onto Izuku's chest. His palms sizzled against the searing skin. Look at me! The core hesitated. The threat analysis shifted. Obstacle detected. Designation, Kaken. The name echoed in the void. It wasn't a threat. It was a key. The sphere of energy in Izuku's hands destabilized. It flickered. Taking advantage of the distraction, the truck screeched around Shigaraki. Spinner hauled his leader into the back. Go! 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 The truck sped off, joined by 3 near high-end nomas that jumped from the shadows to cover their retreat. Izuku's head snapped toward the fleeing villains. The core roared in frustration. It wanted to fire. It wanted to burn them to ash. But Bakugo was in the way. Don't you do it, Bakugo snarled, tears of pain streaming down his face as his hands cooked on Izuku's chest. If you fire that, you kill us too. Is that what you want? To win by killing everyone? The white eyes widened. The pupils flickered into existence for a second. Green. Kaken. The energy vanished. The sudden drop in pressure was violent. The heat dissipated instantly, replaced by a rushing cold wind filling the vacuum. Izuku gasped. The white light faded from his skin, leaving behind angry red burns and deep, glowing cracks that looked like scars filled with magma. His eyes rolled back. Izuku! Bakugo shouted, catching him as he fell. The weight of the boy was shocking. He felt light. Fragile. As if the power had eaten away his density. Endeavor and Shoto arrived a second later. Did he? Shoto started. He stopped, Bakugo panted, looking down at his friend. He stopped. Endeavor looked at the retreating dust cloud of the villains. He raised a hand to signal a pursuit, then lowered it. He looked at his own team, battered, broken, exhausted, and he looked at the boy in Bakugo's arms who was steaming like a cooling reactor. We can't chase, Endeavor said grimly. Secure the area. Get the medics. We need a containment unit immediately. Bakugo looked down at Izuku's chest. The heartbeat was erratic. Fast, then slow. Thump, 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 silence, thump. You idiot, Bakugo whispered, his voice breaking. He clutched the unconscious boy tighter, ignoring the pain in his burned hands. You damn self-sacrificing idiot. What did you do to yourself? From the cracks in Izuku's skin, a faint wisp of white smoke curled up, shaping itself into a question mark before dissolving into the gray sky. The battle was won. But the war had just changed into something far more terrifying. The vestige world, the aftermath. Izuku stood in the center of the mindscape. The throne room was gone. The chairs were gone. In their place was a barren, white wasteland. The core, that massive, terrifying sun, hung low in the sky, dominating the horizon. It was pulsing slowly, like a sleeping beast. Hello? Izuku called out. First? Nana? Silence. He walked forward. The ground felt hot under his feet. He saw a wall. It was a translucent barrier made of the same white energy as the sun. Behind it, trapped like insects in amber, were the vestiges. Nana Shimura was pounding on the wall, shouting something, but no sound came through. Yoichi was slumped against the barrier, looking defeated. All Might's vestige was flickering, almost transparent. I can't hear you! Izuku yelled, running to the wall. He tried to touch it, but his hand passed through it, causing a ripple of pain that shot through his real-world body. You are the pilot now, a thought echoed. It wasn't a voice. It was the core itself. They are merely passengers. Passengers do not steer. Izuku looked up at the sun. Let them out, he pleaded. Inefficient. They hesitate. You require absolute resolve. I don't want absolute resolve. I want my friends. You wanted power to save. I am the power. I am saving. The sun flared. Izuku fell to his knees in the mindscape. He felt his real body being moved, felt the jostle of a stretcher, heard the frantic beeping of machines. He was locked in. The driver's seat was welded shut, and the engine was running on overdrive. He had activated the buried core. And now, the core wasn't going to let him go. Central Hospital, Tokyo. Special Isolation Ward, Sub-Level 4. 48 hours after the Jaka incident. The silence was white. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of a frequency so high that it cancelled out everything else. Izuku Midoriya floated in the void. He was no longer falling, as he had been when he first dived into the quirk's depths. He was standing on a surface that felt like packed ash, dry, colorless, and endless. Above him, the sky was dominated by the core. It was a terrifying thing to behold. In the past, the vestige world of One for All had been a place of auroras, shifting mists, and the comforting, albeit mysterious, presence of the predecessors. Now the mists were gone, burned away by the sheer thermal intensity of the new sun that hung directly overhead. The core was a perfect sphere of white plasma, rimmed with a corona of jagged golden lightning. It didn't give off warmth, it gave off pressure. It felt like a heavy hand pressing down on the top of Izuku's skull, a constant, rhythmic thrum that vibrated in his teeth. Thump. 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 It was a heartbeat. But it wasn't his. Hello? Izuku called out. His voice didn't echo. The ash absorbed the sound instantly. He turned in a circle. First? Nana? Banjo-san? Nothing. Panic began to prickle at the edges of his consciousness. He started to run. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew the geography of this mindscape, or at least he used to. The throne room should be here. The circle of chairs. The vault where the vestiges sat and debated. He ran until his lungs burned, the white sand kicking up around his feet. Then he saw it. It wasn't a room anymore. It was a fortress. Rising out of the ash was a colossal wall of translucent, crystallized energy. It curved upward, forming a dome that trapped the area where the throne room used to be. Izuku sprinted toward it, skidding to a halt in front of the barrier. It was thick, humming with power. Through the distorted glass-like surface, he could see them, the vestiges. Nana Shimura was standing right on the other side. Her face was contorted in a scream, her fists pounding against the barrier. He could see the veins in her neck bulging with the effort, see her mouth forming his name, Izuku. Izuku, but there was no sound. Behind her, Daigoro Banjo was unleashing Black Whip, the tendrils lashing against the wall in a futile attempt to crack it. The fourth user, Shinomori, was on his knees, hands pressed to his head as if in pain. Grandma! Izuku yelled, slamming his hands against the wall. I can hear you! Why can't I hear you? His hands didn't meet resistance like glass. They met a repulsive force. A shock of white electricity arced from the wall into his palms, throwing him backward. He landed hard in the ash, gasping. He looked up. Inside the dome, the first user, Yoichi, walked to the wall. He looked sad. Incredibly, profoundly sad. He placed his hand against the barrier, mirroring where Izuku had touched it. He mouthed something. Izuku squinted, trying to read the lips. You are the lock. Izuku shook his head. No. No, I opened it to save us. I had to push AFO out. Yoichi shook his head slowly. He pointed up. Izuku looked up at the roaring white sun. It is awake, Yoichi mouthed. We are the fuel. You are the furnace. Let them out. Izuku screamed at the sun. Core! Release them. The sun didn't answer. It just flared. A massive prominence of energy erupted from its surface, lashing out like a whip. The heat in the mindscape spiked. Izuku felt his spectral skin beginning to blister. The ash on the ground began to melt into glass. Wake up. The command wasn't spoken. It was an imperative rewritten into his genetic code. The white world shattered. Real world. Central hospital. Pain. It was the first thing that returned. It wasn't the sharp, localized pain of a broken bone. It was a deep, cellular ache, as if every single mitochondrion in his body was exhausted. It felt like he had run a marathon while carrying a truck, and then been microwaved. Izuku opened his eyes. The light in the room was dim, but to his eyes, it was blinding. He groaned, squeezing them shut. He's awake! Vitals spiking. Stabilize the containment field. Don't let the radiation leak. Get recovery girl. And tell All Might. Voices. Chaotic, frightened, urgent. Izuku forced his eyes open again. He tried to sit up, but his body felt strangely heavy and light at the same time. Heavy with fatigue, but light as if his mass had decreased. He was in a room he didn't recognize. The walls were thick metal, lined with hexagonal panels. Between him and the rest of the room was a heavy, multi-layered glass wall. He was in a box. A containment unit. He looked down at his arms. He gasped. His arms were covered in bandages, but beneath the gauze, he could see the glow. Faint, spiderweb cracks of soft white light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The skin around them was angry and red, like the edges of a healing burn, but the cracks themselves looked like open windows into a furnace. Midoriya? Can you hear me? The voice came from a speaker in the ceiling. Izuku looked toward the glass. Beyond the thick partition, a group of doctors in heavy hazmat suits were checking monitors. Standing in front of them, looking small and old, was Recovery Girl, Chiyoba-chan. Izuku croaked. His voice sounded like grinding stones. Water. Do not activate the hydration tube yet. A doctor shouted. His thermal output is still fluctuating. Recovery Girl pressed a button on the intercom. Midoriya, listen to me carefully. Do not try to use your quirk. Do not try to move suddenly. You are in a highly unstable state. Unstable? Izuku shifted. The bed sheets hissed where his skin touched them. Where is Shigaraki? Did we? Shigaraki escaped, Recovery Girl said, her voice trembling slightly. But the war is paused. Both sides are regrouping. Escaped. Izuku closed his eyes. I failed. Midoriya, Recovery Girl continued, her tone shifting to her professional, no-nonsense doctor voice, though Izuku could hear the underlying fear. I need you to look at the monitor to your left. Izuku turned his head. A screen embedded in the wall flickered to life. It showed a heat map of a human body. His body. It was almost entirely white. Normal body temperature is 36.5 degrees Celsius, Recovery Girl explained. Your core temperature is currently fluctuating between 50 and 60 degrees. Your skin's surface temperature spikes to over 200 degrees when you experience stress. That's impossible, Izuku whispered. I'd be dead. Proteins denature at. Your proteins aren't behaving like human proteins anymore, she cut in. That light inside you? It's holding your molecular structure together. But it's also consuming you. The door to the observation room opened. A skeletal figure walked in. He wasn't wearing a hazmat suit. All Might. Toshinori Yagi walked right up to the glass. He placed his hand on it. He looked haggard. His eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Young Midoriya, All Might said softly. All Might. Izuku tried to reach out, but stopped when he saw the hazmat doctors flinch. He lowered his hand. I'm sorry. I lost him. You saved everyone, All Might said firmly. If you hadn't done whatever that was, we would all be dead. Shigaraki had us. You saved us. But at what cost? Izuku looked at his glowing hands. I can't turn it off, All Might. It's quiet in my head. The vestiges are gone. There's just the sun. All Might's expression crumbled. He looked down. I feared as much. Feared? We need to talk, my boy. But first, you have visitors. They refused to leave until they saw you were conscious. 1 hour later, the observation deck. The glass was thick, lead-lined, bulletproof, quirk-resistant. But it couldn't block the looks on their faces. Izuku sat up in the bed, the sheets ruined by scorch marks. On the other side of the glass stood Class 1A. They looked terrible. Bakugo had his right arm in a complex sling, his face covered in bandages where the heat had scorched him. Uraraka had a bruise covering half her cheek, her eyes red from crying. Ida, Todoroki, Kirishima, Tsuyu, they were all battered, dirty, and exhausted, but they were alive. Deku-kun, Uraraka breathed, her hand pressing against the glass. Izuku instinctively pulled the sheet up to his chin, trying to hide the glowing cracks on his neck. I'm okay, guys. Really. Just a little hot. Don't lie, nerd, Bakugo growled. His voice was rough. He stepped forward, shouldering past Ida. I saw you. We all saw you. You turned into a damn nuclear bomb. It was necessary, Izuku said, looking down. Is it true? Todoroki asked quietly. The doctors say they can't come in the room without protective gear. They say you're radiating. Izuku hesitated. Then he nodded. It feels like... He struggled to find the words. It feels like I'm holding my breath. Like I have a lungful of air that I can't let out. If I let it out, I think I'll burn the building down. Uraraka looked at the Geiger counter mounted on the wall next to the glass. The numbers were ticking up steadily just because Izuku was agitated. Can they fix it? Kirishima asked, his usual optimism strained. Recovery Girl can fix anything, right? Or Eri? Eri can't touch him. Aizawa's voice came from the speaker. The class turned. Aizawa was in a wheelchair, one eye bandaged, his leg in a cast. He looked at Izuku through the glass with a mixture of pride and profound sorrow. Eri's quirk rewinds biological states, Aizawa explained. Midoriya's state isn't just biological anymore. It's energy-based. If she touches him, the energy discharge would likely kill her instantly. The silence that followed was suffocating. So he's stuck in there? Mineta squeaked, looking terrified. For now, Aizawa said. Until he learns to suppress the core. Izuku looked at his friends. He saw the fear in Mineta's eyes. He saw the hesitation in Ishido's posture. They were his friends, his family. They loved him, but they were scared of him. He was the monster now. You guys should go, Izuku said, forcing a smile. It felt brittle, like his skin might crack further. You need rest. The villains are still out there. We're not leaving you. Uraraka shouted, slamming her fist against the glass. We're staying right here. Uraraka-san, please, Izuku whispered. The monitor by his bed started beeping rapidly. Warning, thermal output rising. Please. Just go. The air in the containment cell began to shimmer. The water in the pitcher on the bedside table started to bubble. Midoriya, calm down. The doctor on the intercom shouted. Heart rate is escalating. Cooling mist activating. Vents in the ceiling hissed open, spraying a freezing chemical fog into the room. Go! Izuku yelled, squeezing his eyes shut, clutching his head. Get away from me! Bakugo stared at him for 1 second longer, a look of intense, frustrated understanding, before grabbing Uraraka's arm. Come on! We're making it worse. But, move, round face! If he blows, we die. Bakugo dragged them away. As the blast doors closed over the observation window, the last thing Izuku saw was Uraraka's tear-streaked face, watching him disappear into the chemical fog. That night, the revelation. The fog had cleared, leaving the room damp and cold. Izuku sat on the edge of the bed, shivering. The cold helped. It kept the burning under his skin at bay. The door to the airlock hissed. Toshinori walked in. He was wearing a lead apron over his suit, but no helmet. You shouldn't be in here, Izuku said, not looking up. It's dangerous. I am quirkless, my boy, Toshinori said, pulling a metal chair to the center of the room, keeping a safe distance of 3 meters. I have no quirk factor for your radiation to resonate with. It's safer for me than anyone else. Besides, I have not much life left to risk. Izuku clenched his fists. Don't say that. It is the truth. Toshinori sighed. He sat down heavily. We need to discuss what happened. What you found. The buried core, Izuku said. The name tasted like ash in his mouth. Toshinori nodded slowly. Nana, my master, she had a theory. She was a woman of intuition, not science, but she understood the heart of power. Toshinori leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. She believed that One for All wasn't just a stockpile of power. She believed it was a stockpile of will. Karma. Hopes. Dreams. He paused. But she also theorized that eventually, the mass of that will would become too great for a human vessel. She called it the event horizon. The singularity, Izuku murmured. Yes. But Dr. Garaki's singularity theory is about quarks mixing and becoming too complex. Nana's theory was different. She believed that if the power grew dense enough, it would ignite, like a star forming from a gas cloud. Pressure plus time equals fusion. And I ignited it, Izuku said. You were forced to, Toshinori corrected. Shigaraki and All for One were going to steal it. To prevent the theft, you dived deeper than anyone ever had. You went to the root. You found the nuclear heart of the quirk. It's not just power, all might, Izuku whispered, touching his chest. It's alive. It has instincts. It wants to destroy evil. It doesn't care about collateral damage. It doesn't care about my body. It is the raw will to save stripped of humanity, Toshinori said gravely. It is a machine made of justice. And machines do not have mercy. Izuku looked at the older man. Am I dying? Toshinori didn't answer immediately. He looked at the floor. The silence stretched, heavy and terrible. The doctors. Toshinori's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. They analyzed your blood. Your telomeres, the caps on your DNA that determine lifespan, are shortening at an accelerated rate. Your cells are dividing and dying faster than they should. Izuku stared at his hands. How long? At this resting rate? Maybe a few years. But if I use the power? Every time you activate the core, Toshinori looked him in the eye, tears welling up, you are burning months of your life. Maybe years. You are fuel, Izuku. You are the wood in the fireplace. Izuku didn't cry. He felt strangely numb. Maybe the core had burned his tears away too. I see, Izuku said. We will find a way, Toshinori said, standing up abruptly, desperate to offer hope. We will call experts from America. From Ireland. Melissa might know something. We can put you in stasis. We can. All might, Izuku interrupted gently. Toshinori stopped. Thank you for telling me. Toshinori stared at him, heartbroken. I am so sorry, Izuku. I gave you this. I turned you into a sacrifice. You gave me a chance to be a hero, Izuku said, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. And I'm going to be one. Until the end. Toshinori stayed for another hour, but the conversation was circular. There were no answers, only apologies. When he finally left, he looked older than Izuku had ever seen him. The symptom. Izuku was alone again. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. He needed water. The hydration tube was uncomfortable, and his throat felt like sandpaper. He reached for the plastic cup on the bedside table. He moved slowly, trying to keep his heart rate down, trying to keep the hum in his head quiet. Thump. Thump. His fingers brushed the plastic. Hiss. The plastic didn't just melt, it sublimated. It turned into noxious gas instantly. The water splashed onto the metal table, boiling on contact with the surface that his aura had heated up. Izuku jerked his hand back. He looked at his fingertips. They were glowing bright white. He looked at the bed. The metal railing was warping, bending away from him as if repelled by his magnetic field. He stood up. His feet touched the floor. The linoleum tile blackened and cracked under his bare soles. He walked to the glass wall. He saw his reflection. His hair was changing. The green was fading, overtaken by streaks of stark white starting from the roots. His eyes were glowing even in the dark. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a walking exclusion zone. I can't stay here, he realized. The thought was cold and sharp. If I stay, I hurt them. The radiation is leaking. Even through the lead. I'm killing the nurses. I'm killing Kaken and Uraraka just by being in the same building. And there was something else. The core was hungry. It was pulling his attention outward. He could feel them. The villains. He could feel the malice in the city like a bad smell. He could feel muscular, miles away. He could feel the remnants of the PLF regrouping. The villains will come for me, Izuku reasoned. Shigaraki needs this power. If he attacks the hospital, everyone dies. I am the bait. He looked at the door. It was magnetic locked, reinforced steel. He put his hand on the lock. Open, he whispered. He didn't use strength. He just let the core leak a fraction of its power. The steel glowed cherry red, then white. The magnetic mechanism fused, then liquefied. The heavy door groaned and swung open. Alarms started to blare immediately. Red lights flashed in the hallway. Code red. Containment breach. Sub-level 4. Izuku stepped into the hallway. Guards were running toward him. Midoriya! Stop! One guard yelled, raising a tranquilizer rifle. Izuku didn't look at them. He looked at the ventilation grate above him. Black whip. The tendrils shot out. But they weren't the black energy whips of before. They were white, crackling with static. They tore the grate off the ceiling. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered to the guards, to the hospital, to All Might. He activated smokescreen. But like everything else, the quirk had mutated. It wasn't just purple smoke. It was a dense, superheated steam that filled the corridor instantly, blinding the cameras and the guards. Heat signature lost. He's in the vents. By the time the heroes arrived, Endeavor, Best Jeanist, and a frantic Bakugo, the room was empty. On the melted bedside table, etched into the metal with a burning finger, was a note. The letter. Bakugo picked up the piece of slag that used to be a tray. The words were crude, burned into the steel. Don't look for me. I'm a grenade with the pin pulled. I'll take them all down before I explode. Be the heroes who save the people. I'll be the monster who eats the villains. Deku. Bakugo crushed the metal in his hand, ignoring the lingering heat that burned his palm. You damn nerd, Bakugo whispered, his voice trembling with rage and grief. You think you can just walk away? You think we'll let you die alone? He looked up at the hole in the ceiling. I'll chase you to hell if I have to. Outside, thunder rumbled. But there was no rain. The heat radiating from the escaping boy had evaporated the storm before it could fall. The Singularity Star was loose. Day 3 since the awakening. The red light district, Narahata, 2 a.m. Rain fell over the city of Narahata. It was a cold, spring deluge, the kind that slicked the streets with oil and drove the homeless into the subway stations. It washed away the grime of the day, cleaning the neon signs and the trash-littered alleys. But the rain did not touch Izuku Midoriya. He walked down the center of the empty street, a solitary figure wrapped in a tattered, yellow granule cape he had scavenged from a dumpster behind a hardware store. He wore it like a shroud, the hood pulled low over his face. Above him, a phenomenon defied the laws of meteorology. As the raindrops fell toward him, they hit an invisible dome about 6 inches from his skin. There was a hiss, a sound like 1,000 snakes, and the water vanished. It didn't splash. It didn't deflect. It flash-boiled into steam instantly. He walked in a perpetual cloud of his own making, a ghost wreathed in white mist. The sidewalk beneath his red, reinforced boots, stolen from a costume shop, as his old ones had melted, left glowing footprints that faded slowly, the concrete cooling from red to gray in his wake. Thump. 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 The heartbeat in his ears was louder than the storm. It was a drum beating a war march, danger sense triggered. Not the sharp stab of pain he was used to, but a low, vibrating hum in the base of his skull. Predator. Left. 40 meters. Izuku stopped. The steam cloud halted with him. To his left, in the mouth of a dark alleyway, 3 figures were cornering a woman. She was on the ground, clutching a purse, her eyes wide with terror. The figures were mutants, jailbreakers from the chaos of Tartarus. One had spikes protruding from his shoulders. Another had arms that looked like hydraulic pistons. Scream all you want, the spike villain sneered. Heroes don't come here anymore. They're too busy licking their wounds. The woman opened her mouth to scream, but the sound died in her throat. She was looking past the villains. She was looking at the street. The villains turned. Through the curtain of rain and steam, 2 eyes glowed. They were stark white, devoid of pupils, burning with the intensity of magnesium flares. Who's there? The piston villain barked, stepping away from the woman. Get lost, trash. This is our turf. Izuku didn't speak. He took a step into the alley. The temperature spiked. The puddles in the alleyway began to bubble. The cool, damp air was instantly replaced by a dry, suffocating heat. The paint on the brick walls began to peel and curl. I said get lost. The spike villain launched a quill. It flew true, aiming for the hooded figure's chest. The quill entered the steam. It never came out. It disintegrated into ash before it could touch the fabric of the cape. What? The villain took a step back. Izuku lowered his hood. His hair was white, not the white of age, but the white of a flame's heart. His skin was pale, criss-crossed with glowing fissures that pulsed with light. He looked like a ceramic statue that was breaking apart from the inside, revealing a star trapped within. Go back to prison, Izuku said. His voice was distorted, layered with a chaotic static. It sounded like a radio transmission from deep space. The villains didn't attack. Their instincts, honed by survival in the violent world of Quirk society, screamed one thing: apex predator, monster. The third villain shrieked, his nerve breaking. He turned to run deeper into the alley. Izuku raised a hand. Black whip. Tendrils of energy shot out. But they weren't black anymore. They were blindingly bright, crackling ropes of plasma. They moved faster than thought. The whips wrapped around the fleeing villain's legs. There was a smell of singing hair and ozone. Ah! It burns! The villain screamed as he was yanked back. Izuku slammed him into the wall, gently, by his standards, but with enough force to crack the brickwork. The villain slumped unconscious. The other two villains froze. The heat was becoming unbearable. The metal buttons on their jackets were starting to sear their skin. "We surrender!" The Spike villain yelled, dropping to his knees. "Don't burn us! Please!" Izuku stared at them. The core inside him roared. It wanted to finish them. It viewed them not as people, but as evil. And evil was fuel for the fire. "Burn them," the instinct whispered. "Cleanse the world." Izuku clenched his fist, fighting the urge. His hand shook. Sparks drifted from his knuckles. "Leave her," Izuku rasped. "Tie yourselves up. If I see you again." He didn't finish the threat. He didn't have to. He turned to the woman. She was trembling, pressed against the wet dumpsters. The heat coming off him was drying her clothes instantly, but she looked colder than ever. "Are you hurt?" Izuku asked, trying to soften his voice. The woman flinched violently as he took a step toward her. She scrambled backward, kicking at the ground. "Don't come near me!" she shrieked. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were tears of pure terror. She wasn't looking at a savior. She was looking at a demon made of light. Izuku froze. He looked at his hand. It was glowing so brightly it cast harsh shadows in the alley. "I'm a hero," he whispered. I'm Deku. You're burning the air," she cried, covering her mouth to cough. "Please, just go. You're killing us." Izuku felt something break inside his chest, something that had nothing to do with the quirk. He nodded slowly. He pulled the hood back up. "I'm sorry," he said. He turned and walked back into the rain. The steam swallowed him, leaving the woman alone with the unconscious villains and the smell of ozone. The abandoned subway station, sub-level 3, 4 a.m. He needed to hide. The heat signature he gave off was massive. Any hero with thermal imaging, Endeavor, Hawks, the police drones, could spot him from miles away. He was a walking bonfire in a dark forest. He found refuge in an unfinished subway extension beneath the city. It was deep, damp, and cold. The concrete walls were thick enough to dampen the radiation, or so he hoped. Izuku collapsed against a pillar. He slid down until he hit the floor. He was exhausted. But he couldn't sleep. The core didn't sleep. It just waited. His stomach growled. A painful, hollow twisting. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. He reached into the pocket of his oversized cargo pants, stolen from a dryer and a laundromat, and pulled out a plastic water bottle and a nutritional jelly pouch. He looked at the water bottle. "Just be quick," he muttered to himself. He unscrewed the cap. He brought the bottle to his lips. As soon as his fingers tightened on the plastic, the physics of his existence asserted themselves. The heat transfer was instantaneous. Hiss. The plastic warped. The water inside began to boil. Bubbles erupted violently. Izuku poured the boiling water into his mouth. Pain seared his tongue and throat. It felt like drinking lava. But his regeneration factor, boosted by the core, healed the burns as fast as they formed. It was a cycle of destruction and reconstruction. Burn, heal, burn, heal. He choked down the scalding liquid, gasping for air. Steam poured from his mouth like a dragon. "Damn it," he whispered, wiping his mouth. His saliva sizzled on his sleeve. He looked at the jelly pouch. He squeezed the nutrient paste into his mouth before the pouch could melt. It tasted like hot metal. He leaned his head back against the concrete pillar. The stone grew warm behind him. "Mom," he whispered. He wondered what Inko Midoriya was doing right now. Was she crying? Did she know? Did All Might tell her that her son had turned into a nuclear reactor? He remembered her holding him when he was small. He remembered her apologizing. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry." "You don't have to be sorry anymore, Mom," he said to the dark ceiling. "I have a quirk now. I have the strongest quirk in the world." He laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "And I can never hug you again." A tear leaked from his eye. It rolled down his cheek and evaporated with a tiny p sound before it reached his chin. He closed his eyes and let his mind sink. The vestige world, the white desert, he was back. The ash landscape stretched endlessly in every direction. The roar of the core was louder here. The white sun filled half the sky, a pulsating giant that made the air shimmer. Izuku stood in the sand. His avatar here looked like his old self, uniform, green hair, freckles. Here, he was still human, but he was alone. He walked toward the location of the vault. The giant crystalline dome was still there, trapping the vestiges. Inside, the chairs were empty. The predecessors were gone. First? Izuku called out. Nana? Where are you? No answer. The sun flared, sending a wave of white fire across the dunes. Izuku fell to his knees. Please. Talk to me. I don't know what to do. I'm hurting people. I'm scaring them. Silence is the price of power. The thought wasn't his. It came from the sun. I don't want power. Izuku yelled, grabbing handfuls of the white ash. I want to save everyone. That includes the people I love. If I can't be near them, what's the point? The point is victory. The point is the end of all for one. That's not enough. Izuku stood up. He glared at the sun. You're just a quirk. You're a tool. I am the user. I command you to let them speak. He focused. He envisioned the mental door he used to open. He visualized the lock. He pushed his will against the pressure of the sun. It felt like trying to push back the tide with his bare hands. His mental avatar began to burn. His skin peeled away. Let them speak. A crack appeared in the silence. A static noise. Like a radio tuning between stations. ZZZT. Ninth ZZZT. Hear me? Yoichi. Izuku screamed. First. I'm here. The sun flickered. For a brief second, a shadow appeared in front of Izuku. It was Yoichi Shigaraki, the first user. He looked transparent, fading in and out of existence like a bad hologram. Izuku Yoichi's voice was thin, echoing as if from a great distance. You must listen. The core, it is drowning us out. How do I turn it off? Izuku pleaded. How do I go back to normal? Yoichi looked at him with infinite sorrow. You cannot go back. The seal is broken. The singularity has occurred. You are the event horizon. Then what do I do? You must harmonize, Yoichi said, struggling to maintain his form against the wind of the solar flares. The core is not evil. It is pure. It is the will to save distilled into energy, but it lacks humanity. It lacks the gray areas. It wanted me to kill those villains, Izuku said. Yes. To the core, a villain is a pathogen. A virus. The core is the immune system. It kills viruses. It does not rehabilitate them. Yoichi stepped closer. He reached out a hand. You must teach it, Izuku. You must impose your humanity onto the star. If you don't, if you let it drive, you will burn the world to save it. I'm trying, Izuku wept. But I'm so tired. And it hurts. It hurts all the time. I know, Yoichi whispered. We are trying to build a filter. The second and the third, they are working on the walls. But we need time. You must stay alive. You must not overuse the power. Shigaraki is still out there. Shigaraki is broken, Yoichi said. But he will return. When he does, you must be ready. Not as a bomb, but as a lantern. The sun roared again. The connection began to destabilize. Yoichi's form shredded into ribbons of light. Wait! Izuku yelled. Survive, Izuku! Yoichi's voice faded into the static. Do not lose your heart to the heat. Remember who you are. You are not the sun. You are the boy who reached out his hand. The sun flared. The desert went white. Real world. Sublevel 3. Dawn. Izuku woke with a gasp. The subway station was vibrating. He stood up instantly, the motion blur of his movement kicking up a cloud of dust. Danger sense. It wasn't the hum of a predator. It was the buzz of surveillance. Drones. He looked down the tunnel. Tiny, mechanical insects were buzzing through the darkness, their red camera eyes scanning. Police drones? Found him. A synthesized voice echoed from one of the drones. Thermal anomaly confirmed in Sector 4. Temperature, 85 degrees Celsius and rising. Heroes are en route, another voice replied. Izuku gritted his teeth. They were tracking his heat. Of course. He couldn't hide. He was hotter than the surrounding environment by a magnitude of 10. He couldn't fight them. He couldn't fight Endeavor or Genist. If he fought them, he might kill them. He had to run. He charged one for all. Not 100%. Just 5%. Even at 5%, the core amplified it. The green lightning that usually surrounded him was gone, replaced by white arcs of plasma. He crouched and launched himself. He didn't run down the tunnel. He went through the ceiling. He smashed through layers of concrete, pipes, and soil, erupting onto the street above like a missile leaving a silo. The chase. The sun was rising over Narahata, but Izuku didn't stop to admire it. He was moving at Mach speed across the rooftops, leaving scorched footprints on the tiles. Midoriya! Stop! The voice was amplified. Izuku glanced back. Flying on wings of red feathers, Hawks was pursuing him. Behind him, riding a wave of fire, was Endeavor. We just want to help you. Hawks yelled into his headset. Kid, you're falling apart. Let us contain the energy. Izuku didn't slow down. Contain it? You can't contain a star in a cardboard box. He pushed harder. The air cracked around him. He's accelerating. Endeavor shouted. Flash, fire, fist, jet, burn. Endeavor shot a blast of fire to cut off Izuku's path. Izuku didn't dodge. He flew straight through the fire. Endeavor's hell flame felt lukewarm. To the Izuku of yesterday, it would have been hot. To the Izuku of today, it was a cool breeze. He burst through the flames, unharmed. Endeavor stopped in midair, stunned. He ignored it. He's immune to heat, Hawks realized. Endeavor, your quirk is useless against him. He's hotter than you are. Izuku landed on the top of a skyscraper. He turned to face them. He stood on the edge, the wind whipping his tattered yellow cape. His white eyes locked onto the number 1 and number 2 heroes. Don't follow me, Izuku projected. The voice carried over the wind without shouting. Midoriya, Endeavor hovered closer, hands raised in a placating gesture. You are a danger to the public. You are leaking radiation. We have a facility prepared. Lead-lined? Cooling systems. Please, I have a job to do, Izuku said. Your job is to stay alive. Hawks yelled. Look at yourself. You're aging. Your hair is white. Your skin is cracking. You're dying, kid. Izuku touched his face. He felt the cracks. If I die, Izuku said, I'll make sure I take All for One with me. That's not heroism. Endeavor roared. That's suicide. Maybe, Izuku said. He crouched. Wait. Endeavor lunged. Izuku jumped. But he didn't jump away. He jumped up. He shot into the clouds, higher and higher, until the air grew thin and the city became a toy set below him. He entered the cloud layer. The moisture in the clouds boiled instantly around him, creating a massive, expanding ring of vapor that looked like a nuclear detonation cloud. He vanished into the sky. Endeavor and Hawks hovered below the cloud layer, watching the hole in the sky. We lost him, Hawks said, lowering his visor. He's gone. Endeavor clenched his fist, his flames sputtering out. He's not gone. He's hunting. And God help anyone who gets in his way. 3 days later, the mountains of Nagano. The rumor had started on the internet. The White Devil. The ghost of Jaku. The walking sun. Villains whispered it in bars. Civilians typed it on forums. A figure that appeared out of nowhere, destroyed villains with overwhelming force, and vanished before the police could arrive. He left no fingerprints, only melted glass and terrified criminals. But Izuku wasn't reading the internet. He was sitting in a cave, high in the Japanese Alps. He had come here because it was cold. The snow helped. He sat in the center of the cave, cross-legged. Around him, the snow had melted for 50 meters, revealing the bare rock. Flowers were blooming in the unnatural spring he had created. He was eating a can of cold beans. They were warm by the time they hit his mouth. He looked at his arm. The cracks were deeper now. The light shining through them was brighter. He pulled a notebook from his pocket. It was charred, the edges burned, but readable. Hero Analysis for the Future. Number 14. He opened it to a page he had written years ago. Muscular quirk, muscle augmentation. Strategy. 1,000,000% Delaware Detroit smash. He traced the drawing of the villain who had almost killed him and Kota. Danger sense hummed. It wasn't a drone. It wasn't a hero. It was a bloodlust so potent it tasted like iron in his mouth. Izuku stood up. The can of beans fell to the floor. He walked to the mouth of the cave. Standing on a ridge opposite him, silhouetted against the moon, was a mountain of a man. Muscles piled upon muscles, fibers wrapping around each other like snakes. Go to a Masuji. Muscular. He had escaped Tartarus. And he had come hunting. Found you, Muscular grinned. His voice boomed across the valley. I heard the rumors. A little light that burns everything. I thought, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a real fight. Izuku stepped out of the cave. The snow beneath his boots hissed. I remember you, Muscular laughed, expanding his muscle fibers until he was the size of a house. The kid with the punch. You gave me a glass eye. I've been wanting to return the favor. He leaped. He crossed the distance in a single bound, crashing onto the ledge where Izuku stood. The rock shattered. Show me your blood. Muscular screamed, throwing a punch that could level a building. Izuku didn't move. He didn't assume a fighting stance. He didn't charge one for all. He just looked at Muscular. The core analyzed the threat. Target, Muscular. Threat level high. Previous encounter, near fatal. Current status, irrelevant. Muscular's fist connected with Izuku. Or it tried to. A barrier of white energy stopped the fist 1 inch from Izuku's face. Boom. The impact created a shockwave that cleared the snow from the entire mountain peak. Trees snapped in half. An avalanche started on the slopes below, but Izuku hadn't moved a millimeter. Muscular's eyes widened. What? Izuku looked up. His white eyes bored into the villain's soul. You enjoy killing, Izuku stated. It wasn't a question. Yeah. It's the only thing that matters. Muscular laughed, pushing harder, adding more layers of muscle. Strength is justice. Violence is fun. I see. Izuku grabbed Muscular's wrist. Muscular felt heat. Not fire. Heat. Aya! Muscular screamed. His muscle fibers began to unspool. They were withering, drying out, turning to dust under the boy's grip. You are broken, Izuku said. I cannot fix you. Izuku squeezed. There was a sickening crunch of bone. Muscular fell to his knees, clutching his mangled arm. He looked up at the boy, and for the first time since he was a child, he felt fear. This wasn't a hero. Heroes preached. Heroes tried to arrest you. This was a natural disaster wearing human skin. What are you? Muscular whispered. Izuku raised his hand. He pointed his index finger at Muscular's forehead. Energy gathered at the tip. A tiny, condensed ball of starlight. I am the consequences, Izuku said. Flick. A beam of air pressure, superheated to plasma, shot from his finger. It didn't kill Muscular. Izuku angled it slightly. It grazed his temple, cauterizing the skin instantly, and slammed into the rock behind him. The mountain peak exploded. Muscular collapsed, unconscious from the shock and the sheer overwhelming aura of the boy. Izuku stood over him. The battle had lasted 10 seconds. He looked at the fallen villain. He looked at his own hand. I didn't smile, Izuku realized. All Might always smiled to show he was in control. To reassure people. Izuku touched his face. His muscles were rigid. He couldn't smile. The core wouldn't let him. A smile was a waste of energy. He picked up Muscular's unconscious body by the ankle, dragging him effortlessly. I'll leave him for the police, he muttered. He dragged the villain down the mountain, leaving a trail of melted snow and fear in his wake. She watched through the scope of her rifle. She was 3 kilometers away. She saw the heat bloom on her thermal sensor. She saw the boy dragging the massive villain to the steps of a police station, then vanishing in a burst of steam. Lady Nagant lowered her rifle. She tapped her earpiece. Target confirmed, she said. He's in Nagano. Moving south. Good. All for One's voice purred in her ear. Bring him to me, Kana. He is ripe for the plucking. He's not ripe, Nagant muttered, looking at the scorched pavement where the boy had stood. He's rotting. What was that? Nothing. I'm engaging. She packed her rifle. She had a job to do. But as she looked at the destruction the boy had left behind, not out of malice, but out of sheer, uncontrollable power, she felt a twinge of doubt. She wasn't hunting a hero. She was hunting a meltdown, and she wasn't sure who was going to get burned first.